This is lesson 7.27, Dream House Mortgage, Determining Loan Payments. And if you look at your overview, it says mortgage rates over the years have seen many lows and highs. The price of a home in America has also been wide-ranging. Wouldn't it be interesting to compare what the monthly mortgage payment on the average home prices throughout the years would be with both the lowest and highest interest rates? What would our great-great-grandparents have thought of these high prices and low rates? The PMT function will do the job of calculating the monthly payment based on a loan amount, interest rate, and 30 years of monthly payments. And if you look at the far right, it says in this lesson, you will use the payment function to find the monthly mortgage payment of the average American mortgage from 1971 through 2010. And the new skills or TEKS is using the PMT function. And so that's what we'll be doing in this lesson. And if you look at your instructions, it first tells you to create a new spreadsheet. So you'll just go to File, New, Blanks Database, and then save it under your H drive as mortgage, under your BIM folder, under your Excel folder as mortgage. Or if you're working on your Google Drive, just make sure under that BIM folder and Excel folder, you save it as mortgage. Once this has been saved, then you'll go ahead and type the data as shown. So you can scroll down and begin typing all of the information that you see here. Don't forget to continue to scroll down because there's a little bit left on that third page, G, H, and I. So make sure you get those too. And then you can pause your video to get all of your information typed in. Okay, once you get all of your information typed in, then you can go ahead and hit Control S or your little disk up in the top left-hand corner to save your changes. Once you have done that, then you will look at resizing all of your columns so that the data is displayed. And remember, that's just a double click in between the columns to make sure you can see all of your information. And then once you've done that, go ahead and change the font size of the title in cell A1 to 18 point by clicking on it and then just making it 18-point font. And once you have done that, you're going to merge and center cell A1 across columns A through I. So I'm just going to click on A1 through I1. And then under the alignment, it's merge and center. And you should see that expand all the way through column I and be in the middle there. Okay, and then once that has been merged, then you'll be on step 8 where it says bold the column headings in row 2. So you'll just click on the 2 to select the row, and then click on your bold on the Home tab in the font section on the ribbon. And once you have done that, then you'll be on step 9 where it says to format cells B3 through D42 as accounting, and make sure that it also has 2 decimal places. And so B3 through D42. And then once you get those selected, make sure under that number section, you can make sure to select accounting. And then also, if you just, for some reason, if your decimal places aren't reflecting just a 2 decimal place, you can get in the bottom corner where the dialog box launcher is for the format cells, make sure you have accounting selected. And then decimal places are set to 2. And click OK. And once you have done that, you will be on step 10, where it tells you to select cells A3 and A4. And I want you to complete this sequence by filling it down for the years through 2010. So I want you to continue to have those years be numbering on every row all the way through 2010. And now it says to copy and paste cell E3 into cells E4 through E42. It's just wanting us to take this 360 and get it all the way down through cell E42. So it's okay to get in the bottom right-hand corner and just fill that down. It's probably the fastest way to do it. And it's the same thing in column for step 12, where it says to copy and paste cell F3 into cells F4 through F42. So if you'll select F3 and get in the bottom right-hand corner and just fill that 4% all the way down. And then on step 13, it tells you in cell G3 to compute the monthly payment at 4% by typing the formula. And this is where we're looking at that payment function. And so before we start that, let's try to make sense a little bit about what they're asking us to look at here. So these are mortgage payments in America. And if you notice, this is starting in 1971. Okay, so if the sale price of a homes cost a lot less, the amounts of the home was a lot less back in the 70s than it would be in present time, which our information goes up through 2010. And so homes began, as you start scrolling down, you see that homes cost a lot more money nowadays to buy. It's very normal. Now we're in 2018, but it's very normal to purchase a home at $221,000. Homes are expensive, and that's the average home cost. And so if you look, you can see that homes cost a lot more as time goes on. But another interesting point is the interest rates. Back then, interest rates were very high. The average interest rate in 1971 was 18%. And so borrowing $25,000, but at 18%, we're fixing to find that that's going to take a while to pay off, not to mention it's going to make your monthly payment go up significantly because of how high the interest rate was in 1971. And the average interest rate in 2010 was 4%. And so there's a big difference between paying 4% interest on borrowing money, which means you have to pay somebody to borrow the money. Banks don't lend us money for free. They have to make money. And so they'll lend you $25,000, but they lend it to you at a price. And in 1971, the average price that they wanted to get their money back was 18% interest. They wanted to make sure they made quite a big deal of money. I mean, that's what the interest rate was at that time. In 2010, the average interest rate was 4%, and that's what we're looking at here. And so I just wanted to make sure you understand that the down payment is how much you put down. So if you buy a house and the sale price of the house was $25,200, and let's say you had saved enough, or you have $5,000 that you can go ahead and put down at this time, you would take $25,200 and subtract that from our $5,040, and that's how you get the actual loan amount, which means the amount, bottom line, that you need to borrow so you can get your house. You need to borrow $20,160. Most home loan terms, which means how long you have borrowed the money for, the average is 30 years. So 30 years is how long you will get to pay back your money. That's what most people will take out a home loan for. It doesn't mean that that's the only option, but that is the option that most people take. And so that factors to 360 months. If you were to take 30 years and take 30 and multiply it by 12, you're going to get 360. So 360 months, 30 years, at 4% interest, we're fixing to find out what that monthly payment would be by using our payment function. And so now we are ready for that formula. Step 13, in cell G3, compute the monthly payment at 4% by typing the formula. So we're going to head over to G3 now, put our equal sign in, and then you will type capital PMT. And then it says to go ahead and open parenthesis and select F3, and I'm just going to use the point and click method by just clicking on cell F3, but you can also type it in exactly like it appears in the formula. And then divided by, which is that slash located right on the right-hand side bottom part of your keyboard next to the shift key, the question mark and the slash, that's your division sign. And then divided by 12. 12 months are in a year. So we have the 4% divided by 12, comma, E3, which is the 360 payments, which we talked about is the same as 30 years, comma, D3, which is the loan amount, comma, and then the number 1. Close the parenthesis. And that tells us that you're going to be paying $96.25. It's reflected in red because we know that's money that we owe. And so we're going to owe $96.25 a month for 30 years at 4% interest, borrowing $20,160. Now, if you take that cell G3 and you fill it all the way down to G42, you can see that that number changes over time. So if we look going all the way down on this, and if I scroll back over, in 2010, the average home at that point cost $221,800. And so if we assume that you were able to put $44,360 down at the beginning, then you take the original amount of the sell price of the home, subtract it from your down payment, and you know that you need to borrow $177,440. So over the next 30 years or 360 months at 4% interest, we have calculated now that you would pay $847.13 a month for the next 30 years until you get this house paid off. And remember, that's not including your property taxes, insurance on the home, all of those types of things. So that also will increase your monthly house payment. This is just bottom line, how much you're going to have to owe the bank just for the house payment for the next 30 years at 4% interest. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next section of this. And we got to look at our 18% interest rate, which is what it was in 1971. That was the average. Okay, and so if you look at step 14, it says to select cell G3 and copy and paste the formula into the remaining years using the autofill feature. And I've already done that step. I filled that formula down all the way, which was step 14. And then step 15 tells you to copy and paste cell H3 down through cell H42. So we're going to now go ahead and fill our 18% all the way down through H42. And now that we have that interest rate number, we can calculate the payments, the monthly payment using our payment function at 18% interest. And so now we would do an equal sign, payment, or PMT, open parenthesis, and then again, you can just use the point and click, H3 divided by 12, which there are 12 months in a year, comma, E3, and I'm just going to type this since it's easier. So E3, and then comma, D3, and then comma 1. Close parenthesis, shift and the 0, and then hit enter. So we see our number changes quite a bit. And I'll explain that in just a moment. The next step is going to have you go ahead and fill that down so you get in the very bottom right-hand corner of I3 and fill that all the way through to I42. And now let's try to make a little bit of sense with these numbers. And so when you scroll back up, you will see that the monthly payment at 18% interest rate changes things quite a bit. You know, we saw that at 4% interest, if you were borrowing $20,160 over 30 years at 4% interest, you would pay $96.25 a month for 30 years before the $20,160 was paid off. But if the interest rate is 18%, which it was at 1971, it's true, the home cost a lot less than they do now. But the problem was the interest rate was way high. And so now that takes your monthly payment from $96.25 when it's 18% interest. Now you're going to pay $303.83 for the next 30 years, for the next 360 months. And so the interest rate really makes a huge difference, and that's something to consider when you're buying a home and trying to make sure you get locked in at the lowest interest rate possible. If you look at 2010, $221,000 home, or the sell price of the home, you put $44,360 down and you borrow $177,440, and you do this at 4% interest, your payment was $847.13. But imagine if the interest rate was 18% interest like it was in 1971, because if it is 18% at this point, your monthly payment would be $2,674.17 for the next 360 months or 30 years until you're able to pay off $177,440 mortgage payment or mortgage amount that you borrowed. And so it does make a difference on that interest rate. Huge difference between those two numbers. Okay. All right, so now that we kind of understand what we calculated there with our payment function, now you're just going to finish out. Step 18 says to format columns G and I to currency, displaying 2 decimal places. So G and I, you can select them by clicking on the G, and then underneath that number, make sure it is formatted as currency. And then the same thing for column I, and make sure that that is formatted for currency. And remember, it's showing these negatives because it's money that we owe. And then once you have done that, it says to display formulas in the spreadsheet to check for accuracy. And remember, you can do that by clicking on your formula tab from the ribbon. And then from here, you can just under the formula auditing, show formulas to select that. And you can also use your control and the key up at the very top of the keyboard next to the number 1, the tilde, and then hitting that again. Okay. All right, so once you have done that, then it says on step 20 to format the spreadsheet to be centered both horizontally and vertically. So File, Print, and we go through all of our printing steps under Page Setup. Under Margins, make sure it's horizontally and vertically centered on the page. It tells you to set the sheet to print grid lines. And I've always told you guys you can go ahead and select grid lines and the row and column headings. It's just good practice. Change the payout orientation to landscape under Page, Landscape. And then just make sure to check all of your work for accuracy. Make sure all changes have been saved. And once you have saved this, you can go ahead and submit this assignment for lesson 7.27 on the assignment post in Google Classroom. And this will conclude lesson 7.27.